There's no more vital sense than vision. We don't want to be deaf, but if we're deaf and can see, we can still get by. But if you're blind, it's a totally different world. You kind of need to understand that for centuries, nobody dared touch the vitreous, which is the gel in the eye. They knew if they messed with the vitreous, they lost the eye. You know, you don't pull on Superman's cape.
Diabetes caused these vitreous hemorrhages. The devastating part is you couldn't treat it anymore because the hemorrhage was in the way, and the treatment back then was laser, and you couldn't laser through a hemorrhage.
Mockemer showed with an instrument he had developed with an engineer, you could actually enter the eye through a safe spot and with suction and aspiration remove the vitreous and live to tell about it. So it was an absolutely revolutionary thing. People would come to Miami, doctors from St. Louis and other places who didn't have a clue what they were doing. They'd do a 3-day course, purchase one of these instruments, and they'd go home and say, you know, yesterday I couldn't even spell vitrectomy, and now I am a vitrectomist. I mean, it was a kind of scary time. Bill was a risk taker, was an excellent physician, aggressive surgeon. His reputation preceded him.
He trained in Bascom Palmer. He trained with Bob Mockemer, who's invented vitrectomies.
There were 3 fellows in the group, and they all were aggressive and all smart, and they all learned a tremendous amount. That let him come back to Texas as the only vitreoretinal trained surgeon in Texas. And I was fortunate enough to follow him and be part of that too. Unbelievably wonderful times.
We were talking just the other day in my office about him doing his first vitrectomy in Dallas and how there wasn't even a proper dedicated microscope for him to use for this microsurgery, so he was using one that was shared at Baylor, arguing with a neurosurgeon who also wanted to use that same microscope. Just gives you a sense of how daring it was to do those vitrectomies for the first time in Dallas.
He showed that cases that were seemingly previously impossible could be done. He had good hands. He had good hands and good judgment, and he knew how to relate to patients.
I promise you I would take an eye patch off of an eye on a one-day post-op, and it didn't look like it had been operated on.
He took the original ideas of retinal detachment surgery and vitrectomy and ran with them and perfected them.
He's smart and he doesn't mind trying new stuff. And when he does try new things, he does them well. He doesn't mess up.
You know, by the time I got here, Dr. Fuller and Dr. Hutton had joined the practice. The two of them were always looking for being on the edge of the most successful new treatments and trying to bring them into their practice. And so that atmosphere really impressed me. The whole atmosphere was, we want to be on the cutting edge, and the only way we can be on the cutting edge is to also have a research arm.
Helping people is the main thing, and I think I'm sure that's his big motivation for everything.
When he stepped away onto bigger and better things in the administrative side, the world lost a great surgeon that day.
When he developed his own eye problem, which stopped him from doing surgery, he got totally involved in this place. He was sort of instrumental in giving retina practices in and around Dallas a network that they could cooperate within.
But of course, they've got the resources to fund stuff that nobody else could fund, because they could do things nobody else could do.
You know, when you want to buy a piece of equipment at the med school, it's going to take you a good 9 to 12 months. But, you know, we could explain to them, you know, what we wanted to have in place to set up our basic labs when we arrived, and it was all here when we arrived.
So the Southwest Eye Registry started in about 1995 with the Retina Foundation. It's a clinical database as well as a genetic repository of biospecimens. Having this registry allows us to identify appropriate patients for the clinical trial quickly, to enroll them in clinical trials that might benefit them, and hopefully move forward treatments to getting FDA approval so they're available for patients with retinal diseases.
Dr. Hutton has started something that will continue to help people for decades to come.
I think that Dallas will become a place of novel treatments.
A lot of patients, when they get referred to us, unfortunately, their doctors will tell them, there's nothing I can do for you, I don't even need to see you again. And when they come to see us, they're so relieved because it's a different story. We've got more doctors than ever before, more staff. We've been able to see more patients than ever before. Without our patients, we don't have any clinical trials. Without the clinical trials, we don't have advancements in treatments for these diseases. We've added OCT imaging, Optos imaging, mobility testing, virtual reality testing. We're starting to work in stem cell therapy. So in the next 20 years, I hope patients can come in and receive treatments for their diseases, not just options for clinical trials. And that will hopefully be made possible by the donations, all the hard work over the last 50 years.
He probably doesn't realize how much he's affected others.
Good man to have on your side, I can tell you that for sure.
Very compassionate entrepreneur, a guy with business sense, but great hands and a wonderful surgeon.
A genuinely nice person who's kind and fun to spend a meal with.
I think you got to work hard, and I think you got to be willing to take risks. Sometimes you got to tug on Superman's cape.